In 1992, Robin Fuldow, a 26-year-old graduate of Indiana University, found herself working at a Payless shoe source in Indianapolis, conveniently located near Interstate 70. April 8th was originally slated to be her day of rest and relaxation. However, fate had other plans. The employee scheduled to cover the store's counter that day unexpectedly called in sick. This sudden absence left the store manager in a predicament, with limited options available. Consequently, the manager contacted Robin, requesting that she fill in for the absent employee. Despite her initial displeasure at having her day off disrupted, Robin reluctantly agreed to the emergency shift change. She arrived at the store at 10 a.m., prepared to begin her work day as usual. Little did Robin know, the day was about to take a dark and tragic turn. The morning and early afternoon proceeded without incident. Everything seemed to be unfolding in a normal, uneventful manner. Then at approximately 2 p.m., the store manager initiated a routine check by calling the Payless shoe source. To her growing surprise and concern, Robin did not answer the phone. The manager persisted, repeatedly attempting to reach Robin over the next few minutes. When these attempts proved futile, she decided to contact the Speedway gas station, which was situated in close proximity to the shoe store. The manager spoke with one of the gas station employees, who happened to be acquainted with Robin. She asked the employee to check on Robin at the Payless store to ensure that she was all right. The gas station employee agreed, but what she discovered upon arriving at the shoe store was deeply unsettling and perplexing. The store's interior was in a state of disarray. Shoes were scattered, missing from their designated places on the shelves, suggesting some kind of disturbance. The cash register was open, and more alarmingly, it was completely empty. But the most disturbing discovery of all was the complete absence of Robin. There were no signs of her presence anywhere within the store. The gas station employee, now increasingly worried, called out Robin's name, hoping that she might be in the back of the store and would respond. She waited anxiously, listening for any indication of Robin's whereabouts. However, the store remained silent. After several long minutes of standing in the unsettling scene, the employee's concern escalated into alarm. She made the decision to contact the police. At approximately 2:20 p.m., she placed the call, reporting the strange and disturbing situation at the Payless shoe source. Law enforcement officers arrived at the store within a matter of minutes. They immediately began a thorough search of the premises, meticulously looking for any clues that might shed light on Robin's disappearance and the unusual state of the store. The search, however, soon led to a devastating discovery. In the store's back office, the officers found Robin. She was lying there, covered in blood. It was tragically apparent that she was beyond help. During the subsequent investigation, detectives interviewed people in the surrounding area, seeking any information that might be relevant to the case. An employee from a store located across the street provided a potentially crucial piece of information. This employee reported having observed a man acting suspiciously in the vicinity of the Payless shoe source earlier that day. According to this witness, the man had been loitering near the shoe store for approximately half an hour. He was seen sitting on the curb, seemingly preoccupied with the contents of a bag he was carrying. During this time, the man's attention appeared to be focused on the Payless store, as he was observed staring at it. The same employee later reported seeing the same man a short time later, attempting to hitchhike a ride back to Interstate 465, which was located about a quarter of a mile away from the store's location. Unfortunately, the employee was too far away to get a clear and detailed view of the man's face, limiting the value of this observation for identification purposes. Given the fact that money had been stolen from the cash register, and with no other immediate leads to pursue, investigators initially classified the case as a robbery that had taken a tragic turn. However, this initial assessment would soon prove to be drastically inaccurate. Just 3 days later, a chillingly similar tragedy occurred, this time in Wichita, Kansas. The victims were 23-year-old Patricia Smith and 32-year-old Patricia Majors. The two women were working at a bridal shop situated along Interstate 70. The incident unfolded shortly after their usual closing time, as they were waiting for a customer who had arranged to pick up an item. As they waited, they observed a man approaching the store. Initially, they assumed that this man was the customer they were expecting. However, their assumption quickly turned into a horrifying reality. Upon entering the store, the man brandished a firearm. He forced Patricia Smith and Patricia Majors to the back of the establishment, and then, with ruthless efficiency, he executed both women with gunshots to the back of their heads. As the killer was in the process of leaving the bridal shop, he encountered the actual customer whom the two women had been waiting for. Without any hesitation, the killer turned his weapon on the unsuspecting customer. He ordered the customer to go to the back of the store. However, the customer, displaying remarkable courage and presence of mind, defied the killer's command. He turned and ran from the store, narrowly escaping with his life. This fortunate escape provided the police with a valuable opportunity. The customer was able to provide a description of the killer, which was then used to create a sketch. Unfortunately, despite the efforts of the police artists, the resulting sketch did not provide a significant breakthrough in the investigation. By this point, however, the authorities were no longer in doubt. They were dealing with a serial killer, a dangerous individual who was systematically targeting victims. Despite the increased efforts of law enforcement, the killer's deadly spree continued unabated. By May 7th, he had claimed the lives of 3 more victims. These victims were all targeted in small, low-traffic stores located along the I-70 highway, suggesting a pattern in the killer's selection of targets. As investigators worked tirelessly to piece together the puzzle, they managed to compile a few more sketches, hoping that these visual aids would lead to the killer's identification and capture. However, the I-70 killer abruptly ceased his activities and seemingly vanished, going into hiding and leaving a trail of unanswered questions and unsolved crimes. The killer remained inactive for a period, leading some to believe that he had stopped his murderous campaign. That is, until 1993, when he resurfaced, claiming 3 more victims. This time his crimes took place along Interstate 35 in Texas, indicating a geographical shift in his operations. In an apparent attempt to conceal his identity and evade capture, the killer changed his weapon. However, the investigators, now intimately familiar with the patterns and characteristics of the I-70 killer, were quick to recognize the similarities between these new crimes and the previous ones. The modus operandi, the type of victims, and other details pointed to the same individual. In a stroke of incredible fortune, one of his victims, Vicky Webb, miraculously survived despite being shot in the neck. If the I-70 killer were ever apprehended, Vicky Webb's testimony would be of immense value. Her first-hand account of the attack and her potential identification of the perpetrator would be crucial in bringing him to justice and providing closure to the families of his many victims. Despite the best efforts of law enforcement agencies across multiple states, the I-70 killer was never found. The case, plagued by a lack of conclusive evidence and the killer's ability to evade capture, eventually went cold. For nearly 3 decades, the trail went cold, and the investigation stalled. The hope of bringing the killer to justice seemed to dwindle with each passing year. However, in 2021, a development occurred that breathed new life into the long-dormant investigation. Investigators released CCTV footage of a murder that had taken place in 2001. The suspect captured in this footage bore a striking resemblance to the sketches that had been created of the I-70 killer in the early 1990s. This potential connection offered authorities a renewed sense of hope, possibly providing the crucial lead they needed to finally identify and apprehend the elusive serial killer. The renewed investigation suggests that it is likely only a matter of time before he runs out of places to hide and is finally captured. But for now he remains at large, continuing to evade law enforcement and leaving the case unresolved. The authorities and the families of the victims can only hope that he does not claim any more lives before he is brought to justice.